Um, and then, so, yay! Effective! I don't have to change my OBS for this, and I have to mute myself, so I'm not feeding back into my own stream. Sorry, I was just last night I was fiddling with my OBS because I like to stream on DLive when I'm doing game streams or like, you know, switch between the two platforms, and everyone's like, "Don't just put all your eggs in one basket, Jen," because you know, shit's happening with the YouTubes everywhere's. But Streamlabs, I don't have to rework it. I don't have to rework every single like stream key or IP address all the time. Keeping those sorted was driving me nuts a little bit because I'm bad at that. So I'm just gonna share this real quick to get it around, just so people know that I'm streaming. I did send a pre warning that I was going to, but kind of last minute. I actually was planning to do this 2 days ago, but I think maybe my co-host wasn't keen on today and he just didn't say it. I think he had plans today and he was just like, Jen, you might have to find somebody else, because I would have spent more time yesterday doing that as opposed to last minute like, oh shit, what am I going to do? So this is the part of YouTube that I have to get used to, is like starting a stream and like I have a couple topics that I could cover, but I don't really, it's kind of a slow work weekday for Canada. I'm seeing quite a bit of stuff from the US going on, but for us, most of the uproar seems to be Quebec. The Quebecois leader, and let me just make sure I'm saying his name right, because I don't want to be a jackass. Oh, never mind. You know what? We'll just call him Black Guy, because that's funny. Makes me sound really educated. Sorry, sir. But he's very keen on like letting the rest of Canada know that he has no intentions of really working with us unless the issues are the same as what Quebec is focusing on. I'm surprised everyone is surprised that he's doing that, because he's always said that, like, the Quebec bloc is about Quebec. It's not about the rest of Canada. So when he's like, I don't really want to deal with your filthy Albertan oil, I'd rather widen my asshole for the Saudis. He means it, because he hates us more than he hates the Saudis. He's okay with them destroying their environment. And here's the thing. We're not really destroying our environment where we are. We actually clean up where we work. You know, we plant trees. We do all the things that you should do to ensure that your business doesn't have that horrible reputation. It's been 30 years of, you know, oil companies cracking down on that kind of shit. But Quebecois is just like, you dirty Westerners and your dirty filthy oil. Accept our Quebecois prices for our milk, even though you don't need to. Sorry, Quebec, I don't need your cow milk, cow juice, your cheese to survive. I'm more than happy to go to the US for their cheese if you're just gonna do that kind of shit when you're denying us the ability to trade our goods with you for your goods. I'm sitting here like, you know what? That poutine, I've had better. Just saying. But I don't want to rant too much about Quebec, because that's not really, I don't think it's productive. Anyways, I don't hate the people of Quebec. I just think they're really dumb on the issues. I wish I spoke better Quebec French so I could tell them that to their face, that what of Canada is probably a complete lie, and they're going to feed into it until like they burn themselves out, or until they're back to being poor again, which they probably are on the verge of that anyway. Because they still really want to leave Canada. And I'm like, well, you know what? Between you and I, your province and my province, mine can probably do it. I don't think yours can. And there's a lot less love for your province worldwide than there is for mine, just saying. But like I said, let's move on to a different topic. So the other one was the Don Cherry. So do a solid. Let me just get a picture of the guy, because I'm sure some of you know who I'm talking about, and some of you are like, I've heard the name, but it doesn't mean anything to me. So let me just finding his picture is easy. It's whether or not I want to post a picture. And okay, well, that's interesting, Google, because I didn't search for that. Okay. All right. Yeah, for some reason I went to look Don Cherry up and it sent me to this vitamin store. I'm like, no, I don't want to eat the dude. I don't want to eat the dude. Okay, so that's what ridiculous outfit can I post with him? Because I'm sure you guys know who I'm talking about. There we go. The hat. The hat. Yeah, that works. I also have one of the meme they posted of him in blackface, which was fairly nice too. Oh, hi, Sanguine.
Hello.
I think I've talked to you at least once or twice, maybe. I mean, at least in stream, I know I have, but
Yep, I think once or twice.
Once or twice.
Right.
It's like the last 2 months I've actually been hopping around the streams, and it's one of those things where I don't normally do this. Normally I'm happy being the guy just watching the streams, writing commentary in the comment section, and then well, you know, Canada's on fire right now, so my priorities.
So I've heard.
Yeah, my priorities changed really quick when that happened.
And for some reason, the Prime Minister going blackface, that's all fine and dandy. But when you have a dude who acts exactly as he has for the past, 2-3 decades, suddenly he's crossing a line.
I think that's the thing that blew my mind the most. It's like I don't even watch the guy. You know, he's always been a Canadian icon. He's been like the hockey leader. You know, I've always had respect for him in that sense. It's just I'm not a hardcore hockey Canadian fan either. Like I support the sport because it's from our country. I support the teams that go out and do their best because I'm a sportsman type of person. And I appreciate, if you take me to a game, I'm probably going to have fun. Like, the game is interesting. I just, on TV, after a couple hours, I'm just like, nope. And that includes most sports, unless you're hunting stuff. But, I've always known that that's what he was about. Like, I mean, there's been times where he's been on TV where he said stuff and I was like, I didn't care for it. But you know what? I come from a generation that learned how to change the channel.
Yeah, he's always been this kind of brash and boisterous figure from what I've heard. And
they hired him. That's why they hired him.
Yeah. And then him being brash and boisterous, suddenly that's him crossing the line. No. You fucking hired him to be that. Why are you surprised?
And then the other thing, too, is really what they've taken offense to. You people. You people is a group language. You people includes everybody. So while, yes, he is probably addressing individuals who've moved to the country, you know what? He was also addressing the punks who live in the country who were born here. Because let's be real, a lot of us don't get the poppies either. Like, I used to try to at least make sure I got up to 2 every season. Might just be what change I had in my pocket, just to remind myself to get one. It's always been a thing with the poppies. They do fall off. There's been tricks. My dad used to tape the end of his, or, some people would just take off the needle part of it and just sew it to their jacket or something, or just do a quick fix. But you still donate it, And here's the thing. This isn't just Don Cherry. This has been piling up for years. And like what Don Cherry is just he's the cherry on the cake. And I think they're going to see a lot more pushback right now, because the one thing that we don't appreciate, it's like, okay, well, maybe he could have come out and said, you know what, I'm sorry that I could have worded this a little bit better. And he did that on his own.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he had to do. Not apologize for it, because what he said wasn't wrong, but just be like, you know what, I probably could have worded that better. That wasn't, didn't make some people feel singled out so much.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. That's what Canada is about. That is my culture. And I don't understand why these people, and I blame Justin, because when he can sit there and say to the world stage that Canada doesn't have its own culture. We do. It's very similar to the US, it's very similar to the UK, but it's still different. It's similar to the Aussies, but it's still different because we're different people.
It has a lot more A's and moose added to it.
Basically,
those are the main differences, I think.
But like it's some of
Or a
it.
lot more stories.
Oh yeah. It's just some of the ways that we approach things might be a little bit different, but there's a reason why we've always worked amongst the Western side of the world, and it's because we've always tried to be level-headed. We've always been like, okay, you know what, the Americans are you guys are more brave, and I do agree that you guys have more balls when it comes to the world stage. Like you'll just say your mind, and that's not a bad thing. But with Canada, we leveled you out. It wasn't to take you down a peg, but it was just like, okay, you guys are going a little bit too far. Let's just like maybe calm down a little bit. And having that duo works, because when you're dealing with Europe and you're dealing with the other side of the world who's been doing this for a lot longer than we have, we're well aware of where we are on the stage. And the other guys think that we're just stupid and that we don't know that they think we're easy pickings or something.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds like conspiracy theory-ish. Hi, Mustafa. Functional.
It's not really conspiracy theory, because there is this grand tradition of political intrigue pretty much fucking everywhere, but especially in Europe, that had its grand history of backbiting and stabbing. So they did finagle. They are very good at that. So they do see us as upstarts, but at least as far as America, we're the upstart that, yeah, you can talk shit about them, but if you push them a bit too far, we'll punch you in the face.
Oh, yeah. A lot of what I'm saying is just, a lot of it's observational,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of it's just the downright truth. It's like, if I were to go for help to anyone in the world, I'm not going to go to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go to Europe. I'm going to go to the US. And you know what? I'll do the best that I can to make up for it. It's one of those things with Canada and the US. On the grand scheme of things, anytime shit has happened in the US, the only place that's probably ever offered to do anything to help you is probably Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that you're the only ones who do the same thing for us. And maybe this is a resentment showing from me, and I don't mind expressing that, because that there's nothing wrong with expressing, your opinions and your feelings. But oftentimes the rest of the world just thinks that we are so strong all the time that we just don't need anything back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's disgusting, because even if we're strong, we're still doing so much to help out the rest of the world. And even if we are doing better than some places, we're not doing so well right now. You guys are doing okay, but you're not doing so well either. And a lot of it is people trickling in from other places. Some of it's outsiders just interfering with our own politics. And it's understandable that we want to pull away. It's understandable that I'm looking more to you guys and just being like, okay, listen, if we're going to be screwed, can I at least ally with you? Because I'll watch your back if you watch mine.
But the thing is that it's not just external forces that either nation's dealing with. It's the poison within as well. Because you have the people that it's not just other people say that, oh, America doesn't really have a culture, or, oh, Canada doesn't really have a culture. No, it's people within the fucking culture that, as they're going about day-to-day life and interacting with what the fucking culture is, they're going, no, we don't have a culture. So it's not really a problem if we import people from far-flung reaches and we don't have any sort of effort to get them to integrate. It doesn't matter because we don't have a culture to be negatively impacted.
Hello.
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 1/3 of the Snow
is
Mexican
functional.
trio.
He's
Assemble.
my normal host because he has insight into Toronto that I do not have anymore.
Wow.
And he's fun.
Yeah, unfortunately, I live here. I'm kind of fun sometimes. Yeah.
But it's actually been a good 2 months for me for that, Sanguine. Like I'd say I've been meeting a lot more Canadians than I have in the past. It's like most of the Canadians I know are family members or just friends who've moved away. It's not that I don't love the rest of Canada. It's just, we're so big like you guys that you really do kind of get into your own country mode when you're in your province. You're focused on your own life. You're focused on your family.
Yeah, not just a provincial level, but just even all the way down to an individual level. And I mean, that's one of the boons the internet has had on Canada is that it's brought a lot of us together who are of similar mind, but might be on the other side of the country.
Well, it's actually been great for that. Like I'm following a guy from the Yukon, and I mean he's more PPC than conservative. But I mean sometimes he leans towards the Wexit movement, and sometimes he doesn't. But I was just like, you're from the Yukon. I've never met anyone from the Yukon before. I've always wanted to go.
Yeah.
Because there are Alaska. But it's just if you don't know anyone up there, it's just, where you're gonna go. Like,
yeah, seriously, there's not much to go. Not many places to go to. Yeah.
I mean, you're going to see a lot of beautiful scenery, which I would go for that alone. But, I'd be more interested in meeting fellow Canadians. Like, it's like Yellowknife. I've always wanted to go to Yellowknife as well. But yet again, it's one of those trips where, like, you can go up there by yourself in tourism. Like, they do have some. But, you got to pick what time of year you're going to go because it's seasonal.
Yeah.
Hardcore seasonal. Unless you want to be up there for 8 months before you go home.
And it always helps to have a guide in some place that's extremely different from what you're used to. Like
Coyote. But like I've always been fascinated because even to the point where the natives up there are different. I'm not going to call them by that name. You know what I mean?
Oh, but the Snow Mexican is being PC now.
Snow Mexican is being PC. Well, the thing is like, it was always one of those jokes being one of the first generations on the internet and talking to people from the US. And I know it was a troll question when they're like, so do you guys all live in igloos? And you know that like maybe a tenth of the people asking you that are genuinely curious. Like, and you're sitting there like, yeah, I'm just magically really good at wiring my house.
Yeah, see, that isn't so much the question as how many of you are actually just moose in people suits?
About 28%.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was assuming.
I didn't know if that was a genuine question or not. I had to answer it. I have to represent our people.
Just a bunch of moose in people suits and Mounties and eating peas with your horse's knife. I've seen Dudley Do Right. I understand.
And lumberjacks.
Yes.
Like that Monty Python song was about Canadians.
Yes, it was. I kind of miss those history moments. The commercial where they would
I was thinking the same thing with the log driving man.
And the song was like, that's like so Quebec more than anything
So
else.
Canadian. Oh my god, that's
Canadian.
such a like staple of my youth.
But yeah, no, for us up here, it was either you went to Chuck E. Cheese or you went to Bullwinkle. So yeah, I do understand the moose in people skins comment. That'd be amazing though. Where did you hide your horns, sir? That hat.
Well, that's the reason for the large Mountie hat. It helps hide the horns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does it make it cannibalistic if, because moose is pretty good.
Oh, it's tasty.
Like, it's tasty as fuck. Yeah.
And it's pretty lean meat, too.
I guess not for 28% of the population, but yeah.
That's why they're wearing people suits. They don't want
it's
to
a
be on the
defense
menu.
mechanism. And here I thought my ex-girlfriend was just really, really broad.
Well, you know how stampedes often have those guys who ride the cows or the bulls?
Yes.
Bull riders. You'd like to try to do that with a moose.
Well,
But you
apparently he did with his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, see, that's why she's an ex.
Yeah. I found out she was hiding something under her hat, and yeah, it was done.
It was the hairy hindquarters, wasn't it?
I don't like to kiss and tell, but since we're being honest, yeah. That and the jowls, that just constantly saliva dripping, like ugh.
Mm-hmm.
They're like snow camels. They spit and they
do.
drool, and they're. Yeah, I've seen a few up close. I've killed one in my life, and they're when you're looking from afar, they're very majestic, very large creatures. But when you see them up close, it's just like spittle and drool, like ugh.
Yeah, moose are one of those animals that like they're so ugly, they're cute.
There's a large number of wild animals that fall into that category. Though,
Yes, there are.
When you're
Most
looking
of them
at
happen to live
from
in
a
Canada.
distance, you're going, "Wow, that is a rather spectacular animal," and then you get up close and you go, "Whoa!"
What the hell happened to your face, sir?
At least
At
one of the
about
things.
20 yards, something just beat the shit out of you, didn't it?
At least compared to deer too, they're not like environmental monsters. They tend to live very well in balance with their surroundings. They don't overpopulate. They don't overconsume.
They're kind of like a deer panda in their own right. Like they don't really herd. I mean, you might have a
don't
small
wanna fuck.
family, but
Yeah, they get into family units for the most part. Once the children are more or less independent, then the parents will either go off by themselves or split and find new mates.
Mhm.
But that takes like 2 years for them to have another child. I think it was.
yeah, I would imagine so because they're, it's like when anytime you go into like a big complicated animal, like the time that they need to gestate is different. But for them, I've never really looked into how long they carry. But I would imagine it would be a long time.
Typically, the larger the animal, the longer the gestation.
Yeah, that's where my math went to. Short of knowing the actual numbers, I could imagine it's quite a while. But female
Moose
moose
gestation period is 243 days.
Whoosh.
That's a lot,
That is a lot.
especially for a quadruped forest dwelling animal.
Also,
Because there's tons of predators everywhere. There's wolves. There's hyenas, not hyenas, coyotes.
yeah. Well, plus female moose aren't
Bear.
necessarily the size of the males. Like the males are.
No, males are much bigger.
They're beasts, but the females are, yeah, you could get a fairly good sized female, but they're not huge. They're pretty small. But man, those moose, like I actually feel bad going after the big male moose. Like once you get to that size, like when you're that big of a tank, I just feel like my respect for you goes up so much. It's like honestly, if I was starving, yes, that my questioning of not wanting to shoot you changes a lot. But it's like the last the last guy I want to shoot is that moose. It's just because the respect that he has to have just for living that long to get that big.
So, with that gestation period, they actually have a shorter gestation than humans by 1 month.
Yes.
But they're also not exactly the most clever of animals. They get away with it just based off of
Look at that handsome
force.
fellow.
Yep.
He's great. So I actually don't know that answer. Do we call the females does? I don't think so. I mean, you might if you're not sure, but
Oh God, there is a name.
J-Kid!
Hey, J-Kid.
We're keeping your dad's spot warm for him while he's training. So that when he comes back and he's back on his streams, he's got a nice, warm, comfy pillow, and people know to come back.
Yep.
And Universe Man, it's not 38. He said it was 28% of the Canadian population.
Yes, 28%.
Really liked that comment.
So a male moose is called a bull, a female moose is called a cow, and a young moose is called a calf.
Okay, that makes sense. That does make more sense.
Yeah.
Hi, Wolfie Gaming.
So just treat them as bovines.
Yeah, they kind of look like a camel and a cow had relations.
That is a terrifying thought.
Like, I mean, if you look at it, just looking at the icon that I put up for my account, like you can see the snout, the mouth. It's very, very similar to a camel.
Yeah.
However, their body is and structure and how they breed is very similar to ancient cows, aurochs.
You know, that would be an interesting DNA test, because now that you've pointed it out, they do resemble a camel. And if you think about where they would have crossed over, the chances of that happening long enough ago for them to turn into a moose is not impossible.
Yeah, because the Alaskan moose, the largest breed of moose, like a full adult male, let's say about 6 feet, maybe 6'2", you only, like on the hindquarters, you will reach the top of the moose, and you know the rest of him is still there in its glory and its huge mass. Like you're about the size of its hindquarters, like its leg and its butt. Like that's the size of a fully grown, relatively large human male. And then as they bred and spread across Canada, they got smaller and smaller the more south they went. Not like tiny, but you know they reduced in size. They didn't need the fat stores or the size to deal with some of the predators up north as they did moving south. So yeah, it would be really interesting to see the genealogical history of.
They separate at the family level because the moose is Cervidae and the camel is Camelidae.
Mm-hmm.
But they have the same order, of course, because that's the one step up from family.
Interesting.
They're both Oreodactyla.
It's always fascinating to really think about where animals come from. You know, like you look at bears as an example, because I think that one's probably the easiest one to really look at where they diverge off. Because you look at like the short-nosed bear that used to exist, you know, the massive giant beast of a thing. And then they introduced the brown bear and the grizzly bear at about this, pretty much towards the end of the life cycle of that bear. And they got trapped up north, you know, when the land bridge, because like the land bridge like appears and disappears throughout like a long period of time, that they got trapped. And some of them went to Asia and some of them didn't. So like, you know, you look at the difference between like polar bears and panda bears and like the brown bears we have now, because our brown bears are probably close in relationship to polar bears.
Yep, brown bears are far more closely related to polar bears than they are to the American black bear.
Yeah.
Whoa. We say bear of color here?
Well, technically, both of them would be bears of color. Then, wouldn't they?
Just a different shade of brown. Oh, gosh.
The polar bear is really closely related to the grizzly bear, which has allowed the grizzly bear and the polar bear to crossbreed, and you end up with growler bears or pizzly bears.
Interesting.
And the growler bears are absolutely fucking terrifying because they're larger than both and more ill-tempered than both.
Mm.
It's probably all the identity issues they grasp with through their lives. They're like, am I a polar bear? Am I a grizzly? I don't know. Fuck all of you.
Yeah, mixed race, white and brown.
Oh, man.
Just to go back to one of the other articles that well, not articles, but topics that came up. So it's not necessarily to do with the Dawn so much as the response. So have any of you guys ever heard of the socialists? Because I sure hadn't until. Socialism. So the Socialist is a CTV podcast. They look like they're basing it off of The View, but nobody knows anybody in their group, so it doesn't really work. So they had this lady come on who did she was like, I'm going to respond to this Canadian question. I don't go up to the altar of hockey, and I don't worship at it. And all I know about hockey is all the boys that were in there were white, and they were all pretty much bullies. And I mean, she worded it different, but that was what she was saying.
I just have to quickly interject with phrasing it as a Canadian question makes it sound like some neo-Nazi got really confused.
Well, she might as well be. Like, the way she responded to it was just like, oh, well, I knew all these families that would spend $5,000 a year to send their kids to do this hockey thing because, you have to pay for the gear and then the time in the rink. And she's like, you could do a lot with $5,000. And everyone in there is just like, okay, so listen, some people do that. Most people who don't have that kind of money go to programs. There are so many programs in Canada for like reused equipment. Sometimes it's donated for free. We have programs to help kids sign up for the league so that they can get involved.
Of course.
And it outreaches to every group. There's no whites only playing hockey in Canada. It's actually really important for a lot of groups. Like the natives really like it because it brings them out of the reserves and it gives the kids something to do that gets them around Canada. It gets them around their community. It gets them programs that helps them get scholarships. And that applies to all the kids.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, like as any parent can tell you, it's hard enough, especially in today's age, but in recent history as well, before the internet, to get kids out, to get them active, especially if you're in a more urban area, as opposed to when you're out in the country and there's not much to do. But these kinds of programs, not just hockey, they're very important. And for this woman to be like, it's like, no, like maybe you don't have kids because you're some sad, like crazy cat lady, but like,
to be honest,
these kinds of programs are important.
She came across as somebody who just made it all up. If she just said, what, I'm not a hockey fan, I'm Canadian, but I'm not a hockey fan, she would have been fine. She could have said, what, I know of the Don, I appreciate that he's done some good things, but here he was in the wrong, and explain why she thought he was in the wrong.
Yeah.
And that would have been fine, because you can have your opinion on it. Maybe you did see black people when he said you people, or brown people, or what shade you were going for when you decided what he was talking about. You can have an opinion on that, and I'll disagree with you. But what she said was, honestly, it was racist.
Stupid.
It was absolutely racist. And I'm going to start calling people out who do that. And I realize that, when you weigh the size between, whether or not you can be racist to white people or not, I'm like, I'm sorry, if you are being racist, you can argue with me and say that I'm wrong because I'm white, but you're being racist.
But that unto itself is being racist, like saying you can't experience racism because you're white.
You're saying that I can't experience being human.
Racist.
You're saying I can't experience being human. I'm sorry. I've been excluded for stuff before. I've been excluded for being fat before. I've been excluded for being short before. I've been excluded for being female before. And sometimes it was for the right reasons, and sometimes it was just because the guys didn't like me or the girls didn't like me.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't.
We're a tribal species, humans are tribal. And it's only been in recent memory that the term racism has been applied to people just being tribalistic.
Yeah.
When in fact it actually meant something a little bit more severe in that you're physically treating someone or emotionally just treating someone in a demonstrably negative way because of their ethnic background, their racial background. I even hate the name racism because it's not about race.
No.
humans are a race. We have subgenuses in them. We need a better word, but whatever.
Yeah, it's just the one they've given us. But
Well, you have every time that you're referring to race, there's a number of different ideas as to what race is.
yeah,
If you want to talk the most scientifically back, then you just have the 3 anthropological races, which people have trouble with the names of every now and then because you have the Caucasoid, the Mongoloid, and the Negroid.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the only 3 races acknowledged.
Yeah, and I mean, you can make the argument, the case that people of like Latin American descent are just the culmination of 2 that formed somewhat of a new, I don't want to say a new race, but a new trend of genetics with such a like concentrated base that they became fruitful and multiplied, and now they have their sort of own racial identity on more of a social level, less of a genetic level. Because again, at the end of the day, genetically, they're just a culmination of 2.
Well, even genetically, they're still primarily in the Mongoloid grouping.
Yep, Mongoloid with a little bit of Caucasoid in it, yeah.
Yep. And you can tell that by their skeletal features.
Yep.
see, that's where I go back to. Like, anytime people start talking about race and they're like, "Oh, you just don't like me because of my skin color," I'm like, you know what? You're not related to the next guy next to you who's also black. I just want to say to you that your bone structure and his bone structure are completely different. You're probably from different ends of Africa. You're not even from the same countries. You're not from the same tribes. You are not related to each other. The only thing you have in common is your skin tones. And that's really sad. You know what I'd rather have in common with you guys? Your personalities.
Yeah.
You know what? If you're grouped with people, don't group with each other because of your skin tones. Be honest. You're hanging out with the people you're hanging out with because
Or just any immutable characteristic.
exactly
It should not matter.
what you look like. Honestly, I mean, I it's just
And just to comment on something that Mustafa said, they don't like Mongoloid, nor do they like Negroid. Negroid for obvious reasons. Mongoloid because that is also a term for someone who is profoundly downsy.
yeah.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, those are, the scientific terms. And you know what? If you don't like science, fuck off.
Well, to be honest with you, Deck, I'm surprised most of these girls who are like so pro-feminist female abortion shit that they don't actually just do that, because you can get your tubes tied. It's a lot cheaper than just getting repeated abortions, I would imagine, down the road. Because
Yeah, but that is less an expression of the female empowerment than it is to embrace the right to abortion whenever you desire one.
Yeah.
But it would give you full autonomy over your own body for the entire thing.
But nobody had no individual on Earth has full autonomy over their own body. So that, like, the whole notion of that side of the argument is just it drives me nuts, because like, no, the government actually does get in have a say in what I do to my body. I can't self-harm.
Yeah.
You can't sell yourself.
I can't I can't cut myself open and sell off some organs I might not want. Like,
Shit, you can't even sell yourself whole.
Exactly. I can't force my body onto somebody. Like, there are plenty of regulations that, everybody, including men, little Miss Feminists. I call them the feminisms.
See, the thing that drives me crazy about that entire issue is, okay, let's talk about what options do men have. They have 2, somewhat 3, if the girl's game for it. The 2 options that they have all the time is complete abstinence or a Jimmy hat. A condom or rubber, however the fuck you want to call it. Number 3 is only if the girl's up for it. There's other holes to use. But then you look at the options that women have, and they have abstinence. They have spermicidal foam. They have intrauterine
IUDs, yeah.
Yeah, IUDs. They have
Female condoms.
pills.
Bring
They
a
have
condom
female
for themselves.
condoms. They have diaphragms. They have
Tubal ligation.
tubal ligation. And men do have vasectomy in that same category. They have all these additional options. So men have one form of birth control that they can buy.
One readily available, easy to do. Yeah, yeah.
Women have a
Multiple.
plethora of options.
And even with those options, there are sub options. Like how many different forms of, the pill are there?
Yep. That's always bothered me. It's always bothered me that you guys don't have anything really concrete.
Well, I mean, and then to add insult to injury, if a child happens, or pregnancy happens, when neither person wanted that, the woman can decide unilaterally that, don't want this, get it aborted, or can decide not to go for abortion and can unilaterally put it up for adoption, or can unilaterally put it in one of the safe drop sites that so many countries and areas have. And all of that's perfectly fine. If the man doesn't want
empowering.
it, if the man doesn't want it,
well,
unless the woman's game of not writing his name on the documents, he doesn't get a say. There's absolutely nothing that he can do.
Yep.
In order to surrender his parental rights and parental responsibilities. Whereas, like I said, she has all these options.
To dump tail and run away if she wants to.
Yeah.
I've always had a problem with that too. It's especially before the baby's even born. Even before the baby's born, you should be able to be like, listen, I had no interest in this kid. I didn't want to have it be conceived in the first place. You did everything you could.
There should be a right to parental surrender. And Universe Man, it depends on the area that you're in. Certain areas, yes, there is the restriction that the man does need to waive his rights. In other areas, there is no such limit.
Yeah.
And in an ever-growing number of areas, there's the frightening reality of you could be a sperm donor. And she can get you for child support.
Yeah,
a woman can
disgusting in some locations.
Choose to go to a fertility clinic, go to the sperm bank, select you as the donor, and then after having a child that they decided entirely, unilaterally, without any sort of input from you, that, well, now that I've had the child, I need to get money from him. And what's worse is there's now a case of a woman quite literally stealing a man's sperm from a condom after he had disposed of it and impregnating herself, and she won the suit. And now he's paying child support.
Which, I mean, to me, that's just a genetic rape.
It is. And it actually defeats the purpose of the whole donation of the sperm in the first place.
Yep.
Which is like, I don't really want to be a dad, but I know that maybe you want to be a mom, and maybe you have a family who's maybe your dude doesn't have the sperm to provide you with a baby, and here you go. That was the whole idea of it.
No, I mean, backtracking just a little bit for the birth control options, I do understand on a medical level why there are so many more for women, because
Yes, that's
obviously
easy.
they have a lot more to do with a conception of a child. And if we, they do have more, there's that 9 whole months of responsibility
Yeah.
around it. So yes, let's have special protections in those areas. But once if there's no question while the baby is being conceived, maybe we can, as a society, we can talk a little bit more about parental rights when it's in utero. But once it comes out, I believe, and I think any rational person should believe, that those two parents should have equal say, or at least equal representation in family courts.
Well, the thing with that too is like when you think about the time that they've spent on the female part of it, they've been doing that for over 100 years, I'd say, in terms of looking at, okay, what options can we create that'll prevent the birth, and all the focus seems to have been on the women's side.
Well, that's partially because it's
easier.
It's easier prospect, because the number of them are just, okay, how do we prevent the sperm from reaching the egg? Well, there's a bunch of different objects that we can stick in her.
Yeah.
And there's many steps along the way that we can prevent. Whereas with men, taking a pill, like let's say, people want I've seen so many stories from feminazis saying, we need male birth control, blah, 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 blah. The problem is most forms that we understand to chemically sterilize a man are permanent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reversing it. There's no getting off of it and then eventually getting on with your lives and being fertile again. So it's just a matter of like actual scientific inability at this moment, if ever. If one day we find a way that, yes, if you take this pill, it's just like taking, for a woman, taking birth control pills, and 2 months after you stop taking it, your sperm will be viable again. But we just haven't gotten there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's just how it is. Like, it's just at this point, it's just a waiting game and a funding game. If they really were interested in you guys having male birth control, then maybe they should start putting some of their feminist funds towards that research. Oh, wait, that would actually be smart.
Yeah, they would never do it. Just like cancer research.
Doing
Seeking a
something
solution
to solve a problem rather than just whinging.
Yeah.
And they have no interest in anything other than whinging and shrieking and crying.
Yeah, it's the definition of armchair activism.
That's their money. That's their money work. That's how they're getting their money. It's like, honestly, as long as we keep this a problem, for as long as we keep it a problem, the more money we're going to get from it.
Yeah, we can monetize that.
As a woman, I will never pitch for them ever, because they're insincere. They have no care for anybody. It's not even a female thing. They don't give a shit about me as a female.
Yep.
They're more likely to tell me that I'm just uneducated on the subject. It's not like I've been a woman for 38 years, and there's lots of things in there that I can't even poke at. But I just do my best now to like not be a feminist, If I see a woman beating up a man, I'm a lot more aggressive about calling him out on it, to the point where I'll be like, listen, dude, it's not my business, but if you need me to call the cops and play as your witness, I will do it. I will videotape the whole thing, and I will be your witness if that's what you need me to do, but I won't step in unless you want me to.
The problem is, even there are areas where even with a witness going, yep, he didn't lay a hand on her, and she attacked him, the laws are written such that if they're called for a domestic, they take the man and they put him in a jail cell for a bit.
Mm-hmm. I've been in a situation like that, yeah.
Yep, doesn't matter what all the witnesses and all the evidence and every scrap of information that you can get tells them in certain areas, that is what they have to do. That is their protocol and policy. That, it's a domestic, take the man, put him in a jail cell.
Yep. To hell with jurisprudence, like, this is how the law's written. If it was any other groups, people would have been clamoring and crying to the heavens like this is an injustice. But no, because it's just a guy thing. And I think as a gender, guys are less whingy about certain things, about most things. But men tend to be more accepting of their I don't want to say lot in life, but their circumstances.
Yeah.
Well, it comes down, I think, in large part due to something that I've talked about a fair number of times on the Minions, and that is the way that men tend to process a situation. If something shitty happens to a man, the way that we tend to work through it, at least in my experience, and the way that I end up working through it, is if there's something that I can do to improve my lot, I do it before I let the emotions hit.
Yeah, solve the issue at hand and then deal with the fallout after. Yeah.
If there's someone else that is also affected, and I know that they are not as able to keep themselves together, then I hold on until they are sorted, and then is the time that I'm able to let it out. So there's a lack of immediacy, because a good chunk of the time, it's if something happens to, and I could be entirely wrong in this, I might sound slightly sexist, fuck it. If something happens to a woman, it tends to be an immediate, something's happened, what are the emotions? Let emotions run their course, and then they'll start to deal with the other factors, whereas men have the deal with the other factors first, and then only after all the work is done and everything else has been sorted, then you can break.
Yeah, they're much more visceral in their response to an event. Like, I know just even on a personal level, like we've had floods before, my wife and I. And so my initial reaction, curb the flood, clean up some of the water, and then deal with the things after. And my wife, and for lack of a better word, it's not like a complete freak out, but, she freaks out a little bit. She gets, emotional, like, oh my God, well, and kind of gets a little lost. And then, I'm right in there, just working to stop the immediate problem. And then afterwards, deal with the visceral fallout or whatever other fallout, property damage and stuff like that. And that seems to be a general sort of way that, the dichotomy between men and women, how we work.
And you see this a lot at funerals.
Yeah.
And it's something that a lot of people get the misimpression, the misinterpretation that, men don't feel. They aren't
emotionless.
They aren't allowed to feel. They're emotionless. They just suppress it, because they'll see men at funerals and their wives, their children, their friends will be absolutely fucking shattered.
Yeah, hyper emotional. Yeah.
And
which is not a bad thing. None of us are saying it's a bad thing. It's just the way things are. Yeah.
And there will be a guy who is just calmly talking to them and yes, let it out. I know it's terrible that they passed so suddenly. Let it out. It's fine. Things are going to be okay. Yes, we're going to be sad. Yes, we're going to miss them, but things will get better. And then what they don't realize is after that funeral, after they've dealt with the children that were absolutely broken up, after they've dealt with their spouse or their girlfriend or their other family members that are absolutely broken up, and they're pieced together again, that's when they tend to allow
hit by it.
themselves to cry and react.
Mhm.
It's something that I had to do for a group of friends. A few years ago, I had a close friend from high school pass away. Really random. He was in his 20s, about a year younger than I was, and just passed away in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly. The viewing was scheduled. All my friends went to the viewing. I went to the viewing. And while I was at the viewing, I realized that it hit me fairly hard, but my friends were entirely shattered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They weren't able to hold it together. So during the viewing, I didn't cry. I was the shoulder to cry on. And then after the viewing, after the funeral, I grabbed everyone in my group of friends and I made sure that we went to a local bar and restaurant that was fairly nearby. Sat down, made sure everyone got drinks, made sure everyone got food. And as we're eating and drinking, I just started telling stories. Weird shit that happened when we were hanging out. And it started out where everyone at the table, with the exception of me, was crying their eyes out. And as I told stories, people started chuckling because what the fuck was going on then? I mean, did you really do that stupid shit together? Yeah, we did that stupid shit. And after a bit, they started telling stories. And then other people started telling stories. And it went until pretty much everyone that had been bawling their eyes out at the beginning was now able to laugh and smile and remember without breaking up.
Yeah.
And it was once they had all reached a point where they weren't shattered that I just started sloppy crying.
Yeah, because you fulfilled your purpose.
Yep.
It relates a lot to the current most popular theory about psychology in men and women, that this is part of our evolution and how we've in balance, men and women together balance out dealing with crises both emotionally and physically.
Mm-hmm.
And you, I mean, in the strictest sense of the terms, stood up and became the patriarch of that group and sort of led people to I'm fumbling for the word, but you brought them together to realize, hey, everything's okay. This is healthy. This is normal. And then once your purpose was fulfilled, your body, your own psyche said, you know what, dude, now's the time. You can just let it all out. Everybody's stable. Everybody's good. It's now your turn.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. It's amazing.
It, at that point, had been set up that they were just telling stories, and they continued telling stories. And I've phrased it as, when someone dies, you're in an immediate state of you remember and you cry. But there was a tradition that seems to have fallen out of common use, and I don't know why it did so. It's gone by a number of different terms. Wake is one of them, where it's the party element of the funerary practice. It's the feast and drink and storytelling and bullshit portion. Mm-hmm. We've kept all the solemn shit. That was always the funeral, always the vigil and viewing. That was always the solemn portion of death. And with the practice of that celebratory portion having fallen out of use. It just leaves people at the you remember and you cry point.
Yeah.
You need that celebratory moment. You need that drinking, eating, telling stories so that you can
Awake.
Yeah, the wake. Like I said, that's one of the common terms for it. It's awake. You need that because it brings you from the you remember and you cry to you remember and you laugh.
Yeah. Because I believe like the best thing you can do for someone that passes is remember them.
Yep.
And, you know, I'm not saying one is better or worse, you know, the grief or the celebratory of their life together. But I think it's healthy to at least experience both. Yeah. And you're right. We as a Western society, we've moved further and further away from the celebratory of their life and the just focusing on the mourning of their passing.
Yeah, and that's why you have so many people that years and years after someone passes,
they're still traumatized.
They still can't think about that loss without crying. Because they never got to the point where they could remember and laugh. They never worked through that block.
Yeah, they only worked through half of the process.
And that's such a damaging thing, I think. Because you need that. You need to reach the point where you can celebrate their life. Because if you don't reach that point, you find yourself trying not to think about them.
And that's not healthy.
When you try not to think about them, if you're able to not think about them, you don't feel the loss. But there's a saying that I've heard before. I don't know where it originally came from, but it's that a person dies twice. They die when their body stops living. And then they die when the last person to remember them remembers them for the last time.
That's deep.
And if you're stuck at that point where you can't remember them without that pain, then you purposefully try to forget. You purposefully try not to remember them because it hurts too much, and that's a fucking misservice to the person that you lost.
Mm-hmm.
And to yourself, yeah.
Yeah, everyone deals with grief differently too. Like, I remember when my grandfather passed, and you know, for me, I'm the type that I'll start crying if other people are crying. On my own, I probably won't. You know, unless I work myself up to it. Like if I sit there and dwell on like how much I miss the person who's gone, I'm going to be a bawling mess. But usually my brain doesn't really do that. My brain just focuses on like, well, okay, you're gone, but you know, everything important about you is still here because I remember it. But when it comes to like the funeral, like when I went in, I'd just leave. Like anytime I would get emotional, it was mostly because people around me were. And obviously I'd stay strong for them, but like, you know, once your dad kind of loses it in front of you, and I mean, he was strong throughout the whole thing, but you know, once he started crying, it was like, oh God, I'm going to lose it.
Yep.
Because you know, in the same sense, like I was never really close to my grandfather. It was more, I was there for my dad and my aunt more than I was there for myself. And I mean, my dad was trying to be strong, and I was like, Dad, listen, he meant more to you than he did to me because he didn't give a shit about me, except for that I was cute at one point in my life, and then I grew up and I wasn't so cute anymore. But you know, my dad, like I told my dad, I'm like, he's your dad. He's your dad. It's not the same as me losing my dad. Like when I lose my dad, I'll be lost, but I won't be talking to people for a week, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not all going to be sadness. It's just me like focusing on the things that I love about 'em. But you know, it's very different for people. For me, most of my losses in life were pets. Most of my family that I've lost died before I was even born. So like, I mean, for me, I had moments over the last years where it was just like, okay, well, I've never met my grandfather on my mom's side, so I'm there for my mom, because my mom's probably going to lose her mom pretty soon, but for her, it's different because, she's already gone through the motions of loss because my grandmother's completely lost her memory. Like it took her 5 days to remember that my mom was her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
When she went to visit her. So like for her, like the mourning's going to be there when she's gone, but she's already gone through the motions over the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
because the person that she knew's dead. It's just the body.
It's just the body, so it's so different for people. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys. Like, men usually do take most of the grief during that period. I mean, not all. I mean, not all
No,
guys
we're speaking in broad generalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, not all men can hold it together long enough to do it. Like they try so hard, and
Yeah,
I'm just like,
my friends, a good chunk of them were other guys,
Mhm.
and like I said, they were just completely shattered. So I knew that I could hold it together. So it was my job to hold it together. And there's always that person in the group that becomes the rock to start.
I'm having Brussels sprouts for dinner tonight.
And
Hey,
hello,
Samuel.
Samuel.
Hi there, guys.
Hi.
How's my audio? All right?
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Okay, good. If there's any feedback or anything, do let me know, and I'll attempt to crush it as as quickly as possible.
Ugh.
Crush you.
And yes, Mustafa, pretty much every culture, this was a universal practice
Yeah.
when it came to funerary rites. You would have the extremely formal burial, the extremely formal funeral portion, where a shit ton of cultures, you even had professional mourners. They took it that seriously. You had people that you would pay to show up and wail and scream and cry and just be publicly devastated by the death for money. Because that was part of the spectacle. That was part of the formal rite. But then you always had this second portion. The Irish wake, the night, according to you, when it comes to Jamaicans. There's a score of different names for it. And it was just this moment of you have people tell stories.
Mhm.
You eat, you drink, you enjoy your life, and as you're enjoying the finer aspects of life with fine food and fine drink, you told these stories and you remembered and you learned things about the person that passed that you didn't know before because you hear stories that you had never heard. And you laugh. That was always part of it. It was always part of it that you laugh.
Mhm.
And it was just to flip this switch in you. To get to the point where you could remember with pride, with fondness, with a happy heart, the person that has passed. And I think it's a goddamn disservice that we've done, that we've abandoned that portion of the funerary rite.
Yeah.
It's absolutely just a travesty that these days we spend, particularly with funerals, that we just spend so much time the mourning and the crying. I mean, don't get me wrong.
It's an
Pain
important
and-
part. You absolutely
Yeah.
need to go through that.
Absolutely. But celebrating the joy and wonder of somebody's life as well
Yep.
is a fundamental part to honoring the past.
Exactly. And the reason why you need that solemn burial, that solemn funeral portion, is because that is the book closing. That is they're gone.
Mhm.
There's no way that they're coming back. You saw them get put into the ground, or you saw them get burned, or you saw them, whatever the funerary practice is, in order to dispose of the remains. You saw that, and you know they are gone.
Mhm.
You'll never see them again. This was the last time.
Mhm.
And that is as important as the other part.
Mhm.
Because it is that clear, undeniable end where you know things have changed. Because you're told about the death before, or you find out about the death either by being unfortunate enough to find the remains yourself, or just by getting called and told that they passed, or reading that they passed. But hearing about it from someone else, being told about it, reading about it, even finding them, doesn't quite seal that door, doesn't quite close the book all the way. There's still part of you that it feels surreal that they were there yesterday and they aren't now. That the solemn burial, cremation, whatever the practice is, just snaps that final portion in place. That final acknowledgement of it did happen. This isn't a nightmare. This isn't something that I'm dreaming up or having a fit or anything like that. This happened, and I have to accept it.
Yeah, it's such a key part of what we, again, psychologists have, labeled the 5 stages of grief,
Mhm.
and they've more or less universally accepted that these are key to a healthy transition when dealing with the passing of a loved one. And with the excising of one of those steps, or the attempted excising of one of those steps, you're damaging the system.
Mm-hmm.
It's not allowed to, and as an individual human being, that process isn't able to play out for your own mental well-being, and sometimes physical well-being, because of the fallout of that.
And I would say that the stages are missing a component, because the last one is acceptance on that.
Mm-hmm.
Which that doesn't go far enough, because you need the step after of not just acceptance, but I'm not sure how you would phrase it. It's just the continuing on. It's the
More like the celebration of legacy, almost.
rebound, the celebration of legacy, the return to life, effectively.
Yeah. The 5 stages, for anyone who doesn't know, is, and these can happen in any order. It really doesn't, the person is the individual and it can happen in any order. But we have denial and isolation, sort of more of a psychological isolation than physical, but physical can also happen. Anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just on a personal level, I remember every pet I've had throughout my entire life, and that's how I get through the stages. Like, yes, it's sad, and you work through everything, and then at the end you accept, and part of that acceptance is remembering the good times, well, not even just the good times, but remembering the times you had with that other individual, be it a person or a pet or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. I guess remembrance would be the 6th stage that I would add.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Sorry, I got caught looking at an article at another one of those Jess Allen responses.
Which one was Jess Allen? Remind us.
Oh, okay. So Jess
That's
Allen is. I mean, I could post the article. It's not like
Sure.
I can't share it. Let me just pull it up.
She
again.
wasn't that nut job that was.
The Dawn Cherry gal.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. I don't need to share audio for that, so it's just.
Sometimes it's just so hard with all the stuff that we talk about to just remember names, and just on a personal level, like, I'm so bad with names. I'm one of those guys, those people that just, I can remember you if I've seen your face,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll be damned if I remember your name. Might be because I'm such a massive pothead, but you never know.
I'm going to see if I can play the clip. It may or may not work.
They're no longer accepting complaints.
I don't think you can hear it, though.
Well, that's how I live my life every day. I don't accept any complaints. You got a complaint? My middle finger is the complaint department.
Okay. So, I mean, I could read through this real quick. So, basically, the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council, CBSC, is no longer accepting complaints about 3 podcasts related to Don Cherry's firing after receiving a large number of them to date. The complaints have been about 3 separate incidents since last Saturday's Coach's Corner segment, Cherry's firing by Sportsnet, and more recently Tuesday's episode of The Social, in which co-host Jessica Allen made disparaging comments about white boys who played hockey. The CBSC has received a large number of very similar complaints concerning comments made about hockey on CTV's Social, on The Social is the Show, on November 12th, 2019, blah, blah, blah. So what she said is they all tended to be white boys who weren't, let's say, very nice. They were not generally thoughtful. They were often bullies. Their parents were able to afford to spend $5,000 a year on hockey, she said. And she referred to them as the certain type of person that Cherry represents.
And it seems like she's been allowed to be more, I don't want to misrepresent them, but outwardly seem to be a little bit more racist in the verbiage and the tone of the comments, as opposed to Cherry, who was being outwardly more neutral.
Well, she outright singled out.
Outright says white boys. Yeah.
Yeah, she outright singles them out.
I mean, statistically, yeah, it probably is mostly white kids, because guess what, Jess? We're a majority white country. Amazing how numbers work.
That. They're trying their damnedest to change that.
Well,
It's almost as if they think being white's a bad thing, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's okay to be white is actually demonized. Like, we were one of the in my city, Toronto, was one of the cities hit by the prank, and the University of Toronto and York University had a fucking fit over this stuff. But of course, because it's Canada, Toronto, it wasn't really big news and not for very long. But
some snowflakes were crying.
Oh, many a snowflake. A lot of people like on that sort of level of social justice. Toronto is, if not worse, the same as California. And there's very, very little pushback because people just don't care. They're like, oh, well, you're having a little conniption fit. I don't care. I'm going to get on with my life. So there's not really any sort of like social pushback on this shit. But it's happening. Oh, white boys. What are we going to... How are we going to... Guys, let's get serious for a minute. How are we going to solve the problem about white boys? I say just kill them all. I mean, I'm only half white, so I mean, you can take an arm and a leg, and I'll still be able to live my life. But
I think their preferred solution is just genocide.
Well, I mean, from a lot of those sort of hyper left.
Well, if they can't kill you off, then they certainly look like they're trying to castrate you. So
it tends to be the way of socialists. They like their purges.
They like you broken and beaten and defeated, and if they can't get that, then yes, they will be smiling ear to ear to know that you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a good philosophy. I don't like people wake up, like understand that this is the end game here.
You know, the worst thing is no matter how much you try to tell them that you've already become the person that you claim to be fighting against, no matter how many times you try to tell them that, they just don't understand it.
Yeah.
It's like,
I don't think that they're intelligent enough to understand it.
Was it Anita Sarkeesian, I think, and I hate to bring her up, but I think she said something along the lines of, it might have been her, it might have been another prominent internet feminist, who said something words to the effect of, those people that think they are like immune to the effects of certain wrong thing, for want of a better word. Those are the people most likely to be affected, and it seems to be like the more woke these people are, the more likely they are to be horrific racists.
mm-hmm.
Zero self-awareness is the problem.
Well, it might also be just like a childish thing, like when you're trying to accuse somebody else of doing what it is that you're doing, and that's what they're doing. It's like they know damn well that they're the ones picturing
complete projection
monkeys when they see a gorilla, and they're like, "That's racist." None of us are doing that.
See, I disagree slightly. So what I think the issue is that they have defined themselves as good. Not because they do good actions or they make sure that they act appropriately. No, they have defined themselves as good, therefore what they do is good.
Well, their whole sort of like path to power.
Sure. I'm kind of streaming at the moment.
Their whole sort of
good.
Like path to power, I like to call it, is contingent on them being like inherently good, inherently morally good, and it's borderline religious.
Mm-hmm.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah. Because the mechanics in which they're using are the same mechanics that religion used since its inception to control people.
Yeah.
That's what I'm kind of getting at with they have defined themselves as good. They
the moral authority, yeah.
Defined themselves as good because they do good actions. They define themselves as good, therefore what they do is good.
Yeah. And any outcomes of any wrongdoing will be good.
Yeah.
It boils down to that same sort of phrase that you hear from a lot of organized religions, like if you were to ever question, I don't know, throw the Catholic Church out there.
Any dogma,
God is good, God loves us all, etc., etc., etc. Well, bone cancer in children, then. Well, God moves in mysterious ways, and He has a plan, and it's that same sort of almost like hand waving away the problems with the inherent good argument.
Well, it's also a refusal to take responsibility.
Absolutely, yeah.
For what's going on, like for many different things. And yeah, like, I mean, people weren't stupid, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. They maybe not understood the mechanics, the psychology around these things, but they
Yeah.
knew that they were tools, and they used them then, they use them now, and ooh, I don't know if you heard that. I just smacked my mic. And yeah, I mean, it's just a tool like any other, and you know, you got to be wary of who's using what tools and how to combat them.
Absolutely.
Hey, Elwin, my baby's awake.
Oh, hi, Elwin. Welcome to the stream.
Yeah, exactly, Arms Killer. If it's not, you know, feminism, it's environmentalism, it's gun control, it's the Green New Deal, it's a lot of things. And before that, you know, it was the moral panic. It was the religious right talking about D&D and video games, and you know, like it like I said, it's just a tool. It is not a product of left. It is not a product of right. It is a tool that anybody, right, left, up, down, inside, outside, is just going to use because it's an effective tool. Like, even with the worst ideas out there, look at how many people sign up and subscribe to those ideas, and it's dangerous. And that leads us back to the core issue of freedom of speech. Because if everybody's free to speak, then those bad ideas, sure, they'll be presented, and sure, it may persuade some people, but overall, good ideas will win out. There will be more people who will look at good ideas and be like, you know what, that's actually a better idea.
The only argument you really need for freedom of speech versus like hate speech and all that kind of thing is sunlight is the best disinfectant. Like,
Yep.
honestly, as abhorrent as neo-Nazi ideology is, white nationalist ideology, as unpleasant as all these things are, at the end of the day, I don't know about anybody else, but I would much rather know who it is that holds these beliefs, so that I never expend my democratic power, which is restricted basically to a vote, on somebody who is bereft of good ideas, let's say.
Plus,
Yes.
bad ideas, much like mushrooms, thrive in the shit and shade.
Oh god, yeah.
Well, the
Yeah,
other thing
you
too
allow
that
them to
they've
fester and breed and spread.
I would say that they've effectively done over the last 3 years, even, is like we knew who was on the far right on YouTube. You knew based off of their content who they were.
That was never any doubt.
And now
Yeah, of
now
course.
that they've done so much, it's very hard to find those guys. They've gone onto different sites to do their streams, their channels, their videos. It's a lot harder to find them. If we weren't so focused on all these crazies from the left who are genuinely destroying a lot of countries right now, we would be all memeing the far right crazies. We would be mocking the shit out of them. But because they've scared them into a corner, and I wouldn't even say they've scared them. I think they've always had corners. They have no problems
Sure,
going back
yeah.
to those corners. But now what they've done is they've made it harder to keep track of them.
Yeah, they've put up an air of obfuscation where they can, I hate even using this word, but use things like underhanded tactics like dog whistles and stuff, and memes,
Yeah.
and just different ways of saying. And yeah, it's hiding in plain sight, which, you know, as any Star Wars fan will tell you, that's how the Sith came to be. I mean, come on, people. We don't want the Sith to run things.
And what is worse, when someone states that they're going to be silenced, there's people that are trying to silence me, and there's people that will attack me and oppress me and will
get victim voice.
not allow me to say what I need to say, and nothing happens. They're an insane person.
Mm-hmm.
But when someone actually does silence them, when someone actually does attack them, when someone actually does try to limit what they can do, what they can say, who they can be near, then you've made them a goddamn prophet.
Yeah.
You've given them a bit of a victim narrative to start latching onto. And what's going
A
on with
martyrdom,
social media today, with you know, as the example, the far left, they're just calling they're devaluing these labels, these negative labels and connotations, like a Nazi or whatever, by calling everybody that. And then you can't you can't see the forest through the trees because there's just so many. You're like, okay, well, I know at least 90% of you standing in front of me aren't neo-Nazis, but I can't tell who the neo-Nazis are.
Mm-hmm.
I kind
It's
of
self-defeating.
Yeah, on the surface. I mean, this is something of a cynical conspiracy theory, I would suggest. So do take this with a grain of salt. But
Sure.
I think that, to all intents and purposes, I really do think that when it comes to the argument of they're devaluing the term, I don't necessarily think that they are. I think it's one of those things that they are really trying to test the principles of their ideological opponents, because everybody in this room, if we were to encounter a wholehearted, genuine racist,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we would refer to them as anything other than a wholehearted, genuine racist. We wouldn't necessarily be very keen to associate with somebody like that. So it's not that we think that the term racist bears any less weight necessarily. It's I do really feel like
it does, because somebody just making an off-color joke would then be labeled racist, and the actual genuine honest-to-God racist is going to be lost in this sea of people who make off-color jokes. Like, I would never consider myself a racist in the most logical constant of the meaning. But yeah, I've made off-color jokes. I've made jokes about Chinese people and black people and white people. Like, I make jokes.
You might not consider yourself a racist, but you absolutely hate the Asians. Just admit it.
Well, maybe the snow Asians.
I'm sharing a meme.
Stupid
with you
Mongolians!
guys.
Leave my wall alone! See? There. Now, it's a joke.
But Asians
when there's so many more people making that, these off-color jokes, again, you're kind of, yes, if you got into a room with that individual again, face to face, you'd be like, dude, this guy's a complete fucking asshole racist. What's going on here? But again, if they're in this sea of, oh, well, you're a racist and you're a bigot and you're a sexist and this is, you're just diluting the water. So it actually does make it harder to see who it is you want to completely disassociate with, and who you might even want nice map, and who you might just be like, they make some off-color jokes I might not be so sure of, to the people who you're like, oh, well, they're completely not. I love that map.
I mean, you look at that map, it's quite easy to understand where all the environmentalists might be,
I'm just happy I live in Hoth.
And I just have to say, quite easily and enjoyably.
Yeah, it's not so bad.
I've always loved the argument from the environmental crazy people, like, the Earth is going to die. The Earth is going to die. The Earth isn't going anywhere. We are.
Yeah, for our species' worst case scenario, yeah, we might disappear, but the Earth isn't going to go anywhere.
But let's be real, if we disappear, it's probably because we've let people convince ourselves that living in pods and eating bugs is a normal way of life.
Well, yeah, it would probably, if it's not some sort of celestial event like a massive meteor or something, it would probably be
self-inflicted.
Self-destruction to a point. And this is so stupid.
Right.
Situation 50 years from now. You think life was bad back in 2010? Well, if I have to eat one more frickin' grasshopper, let me tell you, boy.
Well, it's any doomsday or apocalypse cult like any other that we've had throughout history. It's just they're more connected and they're more savvy because of the connection, the instant transfer of information we have from one to another.
Yeah.
The only difference between them and camping is camping didn't think far enough ahead.
Oh my god. It was horrible, but deliciously excellent.
A well-charged.
There was another video that I'd retweeted that I'm gonna share as well, just because what he did was so fucking weird. I
Oh
think you
no,
should see it.
you're totally right, Dectran. Junker is definitely like a real life fucking Palpatine. Him or like
Hofstadt.
just sort of picking up my tinfoil hat, not really putting it on, but Soros. He even looks the part. He's kind of like a disheveled, melting old man.
more of a snow.
I saw this video.
What?
It's fucking weird.
What
I'm
is
like,
that,
what the hell?
Mentos?
Mentos, yeah. Watch what he does. It's just he's called the fisherman alchemist at this point. Like, there's got to be an underground like lake or something leading to where he is.
Sure.
But so you're just like, what the hell is he doing?
Building up pressure, yeah. I can't wait.
A weird video.
I can't wait. Got him.
Got him. I'm like, this is stuff like you should share, just because like you wouldn't think that this would be a thing, but somebody worked it out. Like,
And you're totally right, Arms Killer. I mean, we can do the best that we can do. Reduce our environmental footprint. However, that have mostly to do with pollution, like physical, actual pollution. One of the biggest threats that the Bernie Sanders, the AOCs of the world aren't talking about is plastics. Plastics in our ocean. That has kind of been swept aside when it's still a very clear and present danger. So, no, we shouldn't kill ourselves to stop all plastic production. Plastics are one of the great inventions of human history.
it's more one of those things where like
Reduce it. Find better ways, more efficient ways. And, we are doing that. We are going in the right directions. Yes, we're stumbling along the ways here and there, mostly due to people's greed and not doing what they're supposed to, when we see news stories about, recycling gone awry or companies who skirted certain laws to be able to dump more garbage into the world, stupid shit like that. But for the most part, as Western society as a whole, we're going in the right direction. We do have these recycling programs. We do incentivize people to reuse the materials, and there's a market for it. The free market is actually helping immensely by saying, hey, this isn't junk. This actually still has dollar value. Let's find the cheapest, most efficient way to get this back into the consumer sphere, the production sphere, so that people can buy that product again. And that's great.
Well, the irony is... Sorry, go ahead, Toby.
After you.
Oh, I was just going to say, the ironic thing is you've only got to go back sort of like, 40 years?
Mm-hmm.
50 at tops?
Yeah.
Everybody recycled everything anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's a travesty that we go on about. Well, yes, obviously plastics in the ocean are a bad thing. That's only because it became cheaper to produce plastic wrappings and all that kind of thing than it did to recycle, reuse paper bags and glass bottles and all that kind of thing, because there was just so much plastic available. It was that was the primary thing. But I think the thing that upsets me most about the Californian bloody environmentalist nutjob crowd, they're so focused on planting trees, which, by the way, only capture carbon for a limited period of time, and then when the trees fall down, die, etc., and rot away, or lo and behold get caught up in a forest fire, just release all that carbon right back out into the atmosphere. They don't even consider that. And God help you if you bring up the subject of nuclear with any of them. The next time you're dealing with an environmental nut, ask them about nuclear, and if they get a scared look on their face, you're not dealing with somebody who cares about the environment.
There's a couple different things that I want to touch on. First off, it drives me crazy every time that I hear someone say that, well, we can't just rely on tech to solve the problem. No, fuck you. That's exactly what we rely on to solve the problem.
It's what we've relied on to solve problems since since we can record human history.
We haven't got
observe
big
the
teeth.
past.
We haven't got big claws. We don't have any natural weapons.
We've got
any
big
natural
brains,
tools
and
apart
some
from
of
our
us got
minds.
big swinging cards that we can throw around just as good as those big brains. And we're very good at using those big brains to invent, to take material and turn it into tools to use.
Exactly.
Tech is the solution to
Mhm.
pretty much every fucking issue that pops up. And there's one thing that has been driving me insane, and it's the number of people that when there's money going towards a scientific effort, they'll say a phrase that is unbelievably ignorant and enrages me, which is, why are we spending money on that when we have problem X? Because the thing that we're currently spending money on, that research, guess what? It will solve not only the fucking problem that you're talking about, but 27 other fucking problems. The fantastic thing about trying to work out space, trying to figure out, okay, how can we get a single stage craft that is able to get into
Break the
space
stratosphere.
and
Yeah.
back and is reusable. The amount of shit that we can get from that is unbelievable. People mock the Musk putting a Tesla into space, not realizing that part of the reason why it was put into space is they put it on a rather interesting arc that will eventually swing past the planet again, and they're going to try to catch the fucker.
Yeah.
Which, that information, all the effort of going through the process of being able to catch this car again, will allow us to do interesting things in the future, like catch a fucking asteroid.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, unbelievably cool shit. And the amount of stuff that we get from scientific endeavors like that, massive scientific endeavors, is almost obscene to the level. Because it's not just, well, we learned a lot about boosters. No. We learned about fucking material science. We learned about telecommunications. We learned about different ways of preserving food for space flight. We learned about how to deal with this issue, that issue, this issue, that issue.
The people who are not well informed about this type of stuff are probably thinking, our goal is to be like Star Trek and explore the galaxy. Well, no, because first of all, there's a asteroid belt, whatever, very close to us, all things considered, that we could start getting raw materials from.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the baby steps of, let's expand a little bit, and then a little bit, and then a little bit. And who knows, yes, maybe 400 years from now, maybe we'll have the technology from all these developments to, be able to start colonizing the moon or Mars or what have you. Yeah. We're not looking to that right this second.
People are also, sorry, Zangri. Go ahead.
The thing is that tech has a doubling rate. There's a specific equation, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's the rate at which technology ends up doubling. I think it's tech doubles in
Murphy's Law, isn't it?
Say again?
Is it Murphy's Law?
I think so. But no, Murphy's Law is if something will go wrong.
Yeah.
If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. So it's not Murphy's; it's a different one. And I can't remember the exact length of time. I want to say it's less than 7 years.
Yeah.
Technology doubles.
Yep.
And for a while, we were worried that this was going to break down because our ability to miniaturize started to break down. But then we ended up developing metalloceramics, which allows us to make even smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, which means that we aren't worrying about hitting the wall of miniaturization in the near future. So the doubling will continue.
Yeah, because some of these great innovations don't directly keep going. They just help breed other innovations.
Yep. And it's this fantastic human endeavor. It is the defining human endeavor that we figure out new things. We explore and we figure out the goddamn laws of the universe around us, and we play with them.
Mm-hmm. Well, something tells me that you're a big fan of the singularity.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to the technological singularity. I will augment the ever-living fuck out of myself. I just have one rule, and that is every augment that I go for will be a closed-loop augment, because fuck having my mind hooked up to anything that can be accessed outside of my mind.
Yeah, exactly. And what were you going to say, Sammy?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, not only that, but I think a lot of sort of, I'll use the word uninformed because I don't like the word ignorant, but it's a lot of people are also focused on sort of like trying to go to Mars, for example. Yeah. Well, why are we going to Mars when we've got all these problems down here? It's like, because along the way we are going to make hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of, as Bob Ross would call them, happy little accidents on the way. And those happy little accidents are going to improve human quality of life, environmental quality of life, so many things along the way. Medical science has advanced during the space age at a ridiculous rate, only previously seen in times where we had to commit horrible atrocities, horrible sort of crimes against humanity, like the Nazi scientists back in World War II and all that kind of. We no longer have to do horribly unethical experiments post space age, but during the space age, you know.
What's even cooler is we're reaching a point where. So I'm not sure how much any of you know about the way that new medicines are developed. Do you guys know? Okay, so the way that it tends to start is you have preclinical trials, which go from petri dish to small animal models to slightly larger animal models to slightly larger and larger and larger until we're up to experimenting on chimps, effectively. And then after the chimps, we jump to humans in the clinical trials.
Which is a bloody complex life form.
Yes. And, like I said, it starts with just petri dish.
Yep. Base level discovery, yeah.
Absolutely fascinating, some of the shit that we're starting to be able to do, because we're doing some weird shit when it comes to being able to make better model organisms.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
do you people want Planet of the Apes? This is how you get Planet of the Apes!
Well, it isn't.
It's so difficult to justify so many things, though. Like, it's so difficult to justify funding and all that kind of thing to people when so much of human discovery does revolve around, like I say, these happy little accidents. Yeah, it's kind of a case of, well, we want to go and do this thing, and let's see what happens. That's kind of the pitch in a nutshell.
One of the really interesting things that we're starting to be able to do is, let's say we're trying to test a medication for a specific portion of a specific organ in the human body. We're able to make a version of that and stick it in the animal.
On that note, I'm sharing what I was going to share.
So it's being tested on the actual human organ rather than just on the model species that we were using. So it's a closer model, which is fucking amazing.
It's fantastic, yeah. What?
Yeah, Yeah, so the Iraq police brought dogs to sick on their protesters. So a protester brought a lion. It's just like, God damn it, you win, bro.
Oh, it's a female too. She's so beautiful. I love lions.
But she's so sweet though.
Jesus.
She's just like,
Fucking
It's more of a scare tactic than anything.
but it works.
Oh yeah. I see a lion, I'm fucking running.
Well, you know, all the lion has to do is piss in their general direction, and any dog's gonna be like, nope.
Mhm.
Unless you've got a bunch of them, and then in which case it's a different scenario. But yeah,
I love that meme was awesome.
And
Nobody fucks with a lion, bruh.
Element-
Grandma's Boy, one of my
Brought
favorite
out the
movies.
dogfight and won.
Elwin, you're right. There's some fantastic things being done in neural connections for prosthetic devices, and what I think is even slightly more interesting is the work that's being done with regenerating nerve damage with iPSCs.
Oh yeah.
And this is fairly old research now. It's about 7 years old. So we're almost at the point where we might start seeing some of this trickle into human trials, which is fucking amazing. There was a lab that regenerated a centimeter of sciatic nerve
Oh wow.
in living mice.
And I mean, from the technological implications, we already see it making its way into the commercial public market. You know, with what are those VR glasses, the interfaces for your computer where you can interface with just how you look, and that stemmed from these prostheses, from the the actual, you know, like limb prosthesis with the neural connections to, you know, people who are full paraplegics who can, you know, navigate a computer screen and talk through the computer screen just from their eye movements and neural stimulus that they may have in certain parts of their body. It's fucking incredible, dude.
Mm-hmm.
And then those commercial innovations will probably lead back full circle to somewhere back in medicine that will inspire a new branch of these types of prostheses, which will then come back full circle again to, you know, the commercial market. It's a beautiful cycle of our development technology.
There's two slightly competing routes of dealing with spinal cord damage that are both fantastic little bits of tech. So there's the regenerative treatments using iPSCs, which are induced pluripotent stem cells. Just to give a brief explanation of induced pluripotent stem cells, everyone's heard of stem cells.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So the ones that most people are most familiar with are embryonic stem cells.
Yeah.
So you have embryonic stem cells, which you get from a blastosphere or blastocyst. You can harvest from either point. And you break that open, you're able to harvest the completely pluripotent stem cells, the embryonic stem cells. They can become any type of cell line within the human body. Well, then there's also adult stem cells. Adult stem cells are throughout your entire body. There's these multipotent cells. So the difference between pluripotent and multipotent is pluripotent can become any cell line. Multipotent can become a number of cell lines. These, for a while, were the only two categories that you really had to work with when it came to stem cells. Until a fucking fantastic thing was found out, and that was induced pluripotent stem cells. So, induced pluripotent stem cells are a somatic cell. Can be any type of somatic cell with the exception of it can't be a red blood cell because red blood cell doesn't have DNA in it. But any other type of cell. I could take an epithelial cell from any of you. I could insert...
Not before buying me dinner first.
I could insert 4 factors into the cell. The most common 4
You're not even starting with 1, you're going with 4. Sorry.
The most common 4 factors that you can stick in are the Yamazaki factors. And that cell is now a pluripotent stem cell. It's no longer an epithelial cell. It can now become any type of cell. And let's say functional. You have type 1 diabetes. So your insulin-producing cells within your pancreas were wiped out by an autoimmune issue when you were very young. If I did this process, I took your DNA, I made a iPSC from it, I could then differentiate that iPSC into the cells that produce insulin.
And basically restart them.
I could
Regrow them.
reseed your pancreas
Yeah.
with insulin producing cells that have a 0% chance of graft v host
Because they're yours, yeah.
because they are your cells, not anyone else's cells. They are your cells. Absolutely
yeah.
0% chance. Or let's say you have a genetic condition where it wasn't that your insulin production was wiped out by an autoimmune when you're younger. Let's say that instead it's a mutation later in life. It's or one of the rarer forms of type 2 diabetes, where you are now an insulin insufficient type 2 diabetic. So this mutation kind of flipped off your insulin production. I could take an epithelial cell from you. I could stick in the Yamazaki factors. I could do one short bit of gene editing within that cell, that single cell that I have,
Mm-hmm.
and I could swap out your faulty coding for insulin production with a functional coding for insulin production, do the same exact thing, stick that in you, and again, you no longer have diabetes.
Yeah, and it's a much more invasive, less invasive process than like organ cloning.
Yep. Though organ printing is also a really fucking cool thing that is.
Oh yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like in those kinds of cases, it would be easier to do the stem cell treatment as opposed to growing, taking that person's cells, growing them a new pancreas, and then putting it in.
Mm-hmm. And there's a score of different applications when it comes to that. But iPSCs are absolutely amazing because they're your cells. And even with that slight bit of gene editing, that cell is still 99.999 to the 10,000th 9 after decimal. Still
Your DNA.
your DNA.
Yeah. And it's incredible that just 100 years ago or whatever it was, we invented or discovered vaccinations, and now we're actually literally talking about the possibility of gene editing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that you guys took that topic to a much nicer place than my brain went, because I'd had this thought earlier today about.
Oh,
like,
there are going to be genital.
Well, no,
You
my
are going to have
my direction
swarming-
was a lot darker than yours, because I was like, well, if on the off chance I lost a hand, like, I was in an accident and I took one look and it was like, yeah, they're probably going to take that. They usually incinerate those, don't they? They don't exactly give you your arm parts back. I'm like, no, I want my skeletal hand back. I want my hand back. If you're taking it off, I want it back so I can dissolve it and get the bones and get some guy to taxiderm it into like a, middle finger, and then I'm going to attach it to my arm.
Nice.
How legal is that? Or illegal? Because I would do it.
I mean, I imagine it would be cheaper at present to have a donor hand.
Well, yes.
grafted
I mean,
But
I mean,
there's no reason why your hand couldn't be grown and then reattached.
It's just that was always my thing. It was like, because they cut off your hand and then they probably incinerate it, and it's probably the same for your legs and stuff. But I'd be like, no, I kind of want my body power back. I mean, even if you had to, get the skin off of it or whatever for it to be, clean.
Yeah, well, when I had a tumor removed, they said I couldn't keep it. So.
Oh.
Yeah, it depends on the facility. You might be able to convince certain people.
No, in Canada, it's very, very regulated by law that it becomes property of the medical facility because it's considered biohazardous waste.
Yep.
And you, as an individual citizen, are not allowed to possess biological waste of that caliber.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to fill all these formaldehyde jars with?
So that's
Exactly.
that's some major wheedling I'd have to do. I'd be like, okay, I get that you have to make sure that it's
Just
not
get
a
your
biohazard.
doctorate.
Be like, yeah, just be like, I realize you don't want it to
If
be.
you have your
biohazard.
doctorate, you're allowed to to possess biological waste like that.
And to respond to something that Deck Tran said, designer babies. Yes, designer babies will eventually be a thing. I don't
Good.
have as much of an issue with them as a lot of people seem to, because what is the issue with designer babies? Seriously, what is the issue? Choosing to not have a horrendous disorder in the infant?
Well, no, but I can tell you what the logical points against it are. In that, I mean, with society how it is today, who will have access to this? And, it'll probably be people with a lot of money who can afford to do it. And they breed a superhuman, for lack of a better word. And that breed of superhuman then supplants everybody else who can't afford it. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's not inherently bad, but it is an area of concern. Yeah, because of how we're wired in our self-perpetuation of our own bloodlines. We take that to heart a lot more than the perpetuation of the species as a whole. Again, relating back to tribalism and all that. But so I can understand where some of the logical disagreement would be on a personal level. Yeah, I'm all for it because you know what? I really don't care if we make humanity as a whole better. Then fuck, let's do it. Let's genetically engineer people who can withstand the cosmic radiation out there and start colonizing. Let's start.
And also, when it comes to
killing these diseases and genetic conditions altogether, let's get rid of them. Let's make them a footnote in history. Sure.
And when it comes to who's going to get access, yes, when it's the Gen 1 tech, it'll be the wealthiest. When it's the Gen 2, it'll be the wealthiest and people a bit lower.
Sure. Once the technology catches up and it becomes cheaper and more easily accessible, yeah, sure. I'm just saying that there's going to be a point where, and again, I'm just playing devil's advocate, where, maybe that new class of people will completely supplant the one before it. Think Neanderthal and Homo superior. I mean, Homo superior. I'm thinking X-Men. Homo sapiens sapiens. Us. We completely, obliterated them. They no longer exist. But they're a genetic footnote in some of our bloodlines.
Yeah,
they don't exist. We introduced some of their DNA into our, but as a species, they no longer exist. So I can understand that it would be sort of that dichotomy of, well, now the Ubermensch has come and literally
you're gonna get crazy.
Yeah. I mean, like it's just part of understanding the opposition, because again, I'm all for it, but I can understand. And yeah, there are going to be the crazies who are like, I can't even think of the more illogical aspects of it, but the countenance to genetic engineering, like on that kind of a scale. But I think it's fucking awesome.
Yeah. We will reach a point where not only will you be able to have the designer babies, which I don't see that as big of an issue as some people do.
Mhm.
Because Gen 1 designer babies,
It'll be superficial things like hair color, eye color,
And even
disease
then-
immunity.
we are varied enough that you don't have to really worry about all the designer babies being the same.
Well, I'd be worried about government designer babies for super soldiers that, really have no free will or little free will and will.
Yeah.
Well, that's
That's more
that's
conspiratorial.
gonna
That's
be
more
more
out
conditioning
there, but
Yeah.
that is something I have thought of.
Well,
But,
I would
but you're
say-
right. At a fundamental level, like starting Gen 1, it won't be super serious. It's, when we're talking about Gen 10 tech, that's when that kind of stuff can somewhat start being introduced. But by that point, I don't think it would be a big issue.
Exactly. It wouldn't be a big issue. As the tech goes on, it will become available to ever wider sweeps of the population. And not only that, but we're going to have ways of editing within an already existing person.
Well-
You won't just have designer babies. You'll have designer yous.
gene therapy, effectively,
You'll have gene
which
therapy.
already exists to certain extents.
Yep. But you'll have it to a much greater degree. And all kinds of fantastic shit are going to come from that.
Well, I would
Like,
like to
real
start
life
a fundraiser.
X-Men. And who the fuck doesn't want real life X-Men? Come on, people.
And you just know that it's only a matter of time before there is a designer genitalia store and there's a lot of people walking around with bigger, blacker dicks.
I would like to submit my own personal design. I've been working on it for 28 years.
For personalized genitalia? Why do I get the horrible mental image that
Now,
it's some
but I've thought of
Cthulhu-esque-
that has actually crossed my mind before with the genitalia store thing, and that
Could
would
you?
lead to a lot of sore women who would then design larger, deeper canals, who would then in turn,
Oh God, no.
That already exists.
Well, no.
It's called the
What
ultra
you
feminist.
what you
More likely they're going to design a man who can actually have a period, and then just be like, "See, men can have their periods
about-
too."
What about ethical
Well, that
concern?
would be
An ethical concern of, say, like gene editing to the point of ensuring your child won't be homosexual.
That sort of boils down to: is there a genetic component to homosexuality?
Well,
or is it
for argument's sake, let's say there is.
yeah.
there
Or
appears
the
to
flip side
be-
of that: can you engineer a child that will be homosexual?
there appears to be a genetic, or at the very least, epigenetic
Hmm.
linkage to homosexuality, because you do have, if one identical twin is homosexual, it massively increases the chance that the other one is too.
Yeah.
And it seems like with a great many things in people, that it's probably not just a simple, yep, this is the single gay gene done really easy. It's probably a more like the cancer genes that we found, which aren't really you have this gene, you have cancer. It's you have this gene and you have a greater propensity.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the situations are environmental, like the birth order of the male child.
Yeah. And whether or not they live in California.
The greater number of male children that your mother has, the greater chance that the last one is gay. Not just that there will be one gay one within that grouping, but that the last one will be gay.
I would sort of broach broach the notion that perhaps the parents might be a little too interested in the sexuality of their offspring at that point. I think at that point it's kind of like, why does this concern you so much? I think that's the broader ethical question at that point. At least I hope it is.
But even then, what would be the issue of a person deciding that they want their child to not be gay or want their child to be gay?
I mean,
Okay.
with reason.
Because you'd have enough.
I dare say there isn't an issue. But
You have
Well,
enough
there
of
could be.
each case.
Because again, on a fundamental personal level, you want the perpetuation of your own bloodline. So I mean that could be one reason why a lot of people have a hard time accepting it. They might not just it might not be a pure clean cut case of pure bigotry, but more so
it's an evolutionary psychological situation.
Sure,
Almost certainly.
yeah.
You know, I feel like a lot of the gay community pulled away from that a lot, you know, because when you really speak about it as like, oh, it's a genetics thing, you know, that would leave out a whole lot of gay people who are just faking it.
Well, I mean, on a personal level, faking it. I mean, on a personal level, I do believe that there are both genetic and environmental factors.
Yeah, it is a genetic and environmental situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it was a purely genetic sort of situation, you would assume that like
We would have found
almost
it by
every.
now.
Yeah. Well, A, we would have found it by now, and B, that there would be some sort of like really true, really like common factors between gay people. And yet, when you look at you compare somebody to say like Milo Yiannopoulos, and you put them at the side of like Dave Rubin.
They're as diverse as
What
any.
do they have in common?
Yeah, they're as diverse as any group of human beings. Yeah, of
I
course.
disagree that we would have found it by now, but what we would have been able to determine is that it is 100% genetic, or functionally 100%.
Yeah. I don't mean like found it and be able to point to it on a map, but I mean found it in a way that, hey, we've studied this for a while, but we really don't find any commonality between, you know, what makes somebody have a different sexual proclivity, like at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the thing that would be the telltale sign if it was 100% genetic
Mhm.
would be that 100% of homosexual identical twins would have a homosexual twin.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't see that. We see that you are ridiculously more likely. It's something like 80 to 90% more likely if your identical twin brother or sister is homosexual, that you will be homosexual and vice versa.
Mhm.
But it's not 100%. So there's some environmental factor.
We just don't know what the split is.
We just don't know what the split is. And like I said, it's probably some combination of genetic, epigenetic, and environmental.
Yeah.
That actually causes that switch.
Funny enough, just saying that is probably the quickest way to get banned on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of it starts begging that very very awkward question as it is at the moment. Like it's very very obvious to anybody who's done anything as regards to like gene science at all, or at least I assume it is. I have a very layman's understanding of it, but it's like the discussion of like genetic differences between people of different races. Very very obviously there is some genetic component there. And also, I would suggest that there's an environmental difference there as well, whether that's expressed over time or over multiple generations, what have you. But you can't really have that discussion without upsetting a lot of people. And I think it's kind of got to the point where most people have sort of come to the conclusion that the differences are, to all intents and purposes, so small that it's not really worth having that discussion. And maybe that's the sort of the route we'll go down. Sorry, the route we'll go down when it comes to, is there a homosexual gene, quote unquote.
Or is it just a gay condition? Sorry, I can help myself. It was just a reference to the anti-gay African preacher guy. It's the gay condition. It's a disease. They eat the poo-poo. Yeah, it's... I hear Jin typing.
Sorry, I'm just talking to my brother.
Oh, Cynic. Hey, Cynic. How's it going, buddy?
Hi, Cynic.
One has to wonder what that dude was looking up in order to find copophiliac gays.
Yeah, well, I mean, what is Rule 36? They got access to the internet, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and they encountered the POS community on Reddit or something.
Yeah.
He probably had the same reaction to that as the first experience I had discovering what a furry was. Like,
oh, good God.
I've been emotionally scarred for the rest of my life because of it.
Sad was the day when the fucking phrase "uwu" was added to my lexicon. Sad was the day, friends.
Although, I'm not adverse to genetically engineering some cat girls.
I mean, who is?
Depends on how furry you go with that one.
Not just the ears and the tail.
If you just limit to the ears and the tail and the claws, you're probably okay. But I mean, then you're giving a girl claws, so...
At the very least, keep them bipedal.
I mean, they don't need that for what I've got in mind, but sure.
It's the ones that go after like centaurs that I'm just like, you're really laddering up for that one, aren't you?
Well, here's the thing: if you're going for centaur, you'd have to do a ridiculous amount of genetic sequencing because you would need to take effectively every mammal has the 4-limb issue. Effectively, they, with the exception of whales and other marine mammals, but technically even they have the 4 limbs. It's just their hind limbs were so short they never escaped the body.
I'm sharing your screen.
Okay, good. It's not working again. What the hell? Let me find that again.
Sure.
But you'd end up having to figure out a way where you would be able to code for the torso of the human growing where the head of the animal or the neck of the animal should be growing at full scale, while also doing the full body minus the neck and head of the animal.
See, on the left, the Japanese depiction of Catgirl, you can see she's got the ears. On other drawings, you can see she's got a tail, has that sort of feline temperament. And then you have Hollywood, which is just like, oh, no, get it away. This is what we don't want people, or, well, most people outside of the furry community. This is generally what people are... Yeah.
No, even the furries want it to at least have nipples.
Did not need that image in my head. I really did not. Yeah, I could deal with these actually existing. Furry Shakespeare. Okay, that's it. Stop screen. Ugh, too much. Close that shit down.
Save that one for later, functional. I think when it comes to centaurs, I don't think you could realistically genetically code for that. I think you'd probably have to go down the lines of like Siamism. Is it Siamism? They're conjoined twins or something along those lines.
Yeah, like I said, it would be extraordinarily difficult. Also, you'd have to deal with the issue of human infants don't have control over their head for an extended period of time.
Oh God.
Picturing an infant with the body of an
No,
infant.
I'm not saying I want one, Elwyn. I'm just saying I would be okay if they existed.
Animals tend to plop out and be able to get up and move. So just imagine floppy baby head on a colt's legs. The
Yeah.
colt is trying to run around as the baby's getting shaken baby syndrome.
Viability of such a
So, guys, the new Star Wars game is coming out today or tomorrow. 7 hours. Just trying to change the topic because I'm getting very disturbed right now. Did anybody get a chance to see The Mandalorian?
Things.
Not yet, no.
I haven't
It's
seen
good.
The Mandalorian, but I've heard very good things about it.
It's good. Without ruining anything, you know, Pedro Pascal's always been a new favorite of mine as far as acting goes, and he plays the role well. But the tone and the feel and the storytelling is returning to its, you know, cowboy or samurai in space feeling that Star Wars initially captured in people. And so I'm really happy to see that in just one episode, I got that feeling of a Clint Eastwood movie or a Lone Wolf and Cub, Japanese samurai kind of movie. I'm really pulling for this one, which gives me hope for things like the future with like Obi-Wan.
You can't just take me from Catgirls to Star Wars and not expect things to get a little bit more dysfunctional. That's just not.
Hey, there's still
not a reasonable expectation.
No, we didn't. No, it wasn't the cat girls. It was the centaur babies with floppy heads. I was just getting really weirded out.
I tuned out for that. I was too busy googling Catgirls.
I have a very vivid imagination and just like, no, get it out of my. Why is it in my head now?
Like I said, it would end up with shaken baby syndrome.
If I was a better artist, I would be already on Works to drawing that, just so I could creep people out. Meme culture for the win.
Creating cursed images.
And you're right, Arms Killer. The new Star Wars game, it does kind of look like shit. But I didn't get Disney Plus just for that shit. That's so stupid, and I fucking hate Disney as a corporation. But I just downloaded it. I don't care.
You know, I can't
One
help
word.
thinking that
Yeah.
Walter just disgusted with where his company has gone.
Yeah.
For all his own failings, I think he would look at what his family has done and the CEOs that have taken over, and I think he'd be disgusted.
Yeah, because he wanted to entertain and enjoy, and yeah, he loved the success he got, but they really seemed to like lost that sense of joy and wonder that Disney once had for people. Me, throughout my entire life, even as a young kid, I hated Disney. I really didn't like it. I was more into, reading Stephen King books and watching horror movies and things like Star Wars, and that's where I was more at. But I understood where Disney was more or less a good consumer product, and they've I don't know, lost their way, for lack of a better term, more recently in their history.
Yeah, they've really gone the way of like, I probably sound like a leftist saying it, but like they've really gone that way of the corporate. Like they're 100% the corporate guy that like they try to claim everybody else is, or
They are.
And just pump out shit.
yeah.
Speaking of the differences between classic and current cartoons, we need to resurrect the In the Future cartoons. Those were amazing, and
But why would you do that if we only have 12 months to live? No, there actually are. Most recently, one that comes to mind immediately is, it is Star Wars, but Star Wars Rebels was really good. It was a futuristic kids show, and they dealt with, the topics du jour. I know what you're talking about, more like Jetsons.
No, not even Jetsons, because that's still more of a sci-fi. there was this brand of or type of cartoon that was popular for a while. That was the In the Future cartoon, and it would show the house of the future and the animals of the future and the cars of the future.
I know what you're talking about now.
And the animals of the future ones were always the funniest to me because they would always end with something ridiculous like
Centaurs.
And dear viewers, if any of you can find it within your hearts to give a home to a poor old hootenanny, just contact us at this number. And it's a goat and an owl fused together into one homunculus creature.
Jeez. David Carradine versus Chuck Norris.
It reminds me of those. Did you ever see those pictures of? Was it Ray Comfort's conception of a transitional species? Yeah.
Yep.
Shit, I'd have one of those things. Look badass. Is it going to eat bread or bite me in half? That is the question.
I still love the fact that he'd never realized that the thing that he was demanding evidence for would be something that would disprove the current evolutionary model.
Yeah.
It wouldn't disprove evolution, just the current model.
Okay, guys, I think we've kind of gone for a little bit past the 2-hour mark. I think maybe we should start winding down. So if you want to shill for yourselves, by all means.
I don't do nothing.
You don't do nothing? Well, you're my partner in crime right now, so you do stuff.
Yeah, you can find us here on Snow Mexicans or on my channel. I do, or I did game reviews, but obviously doing a little bit more of this sort of talking stuff now. So.
Yeah, I wish we had a Tucker up here. We do have a Tucker up here. It's just most of our Tuckers have been silenced.
I still maintain Steve Paikin is our go-to guy for reasonable discourse on CBC. He's the one who interviewed Jordan Peterson that caused Lindsay Shepherd to go through all that bullshit and cause such a spurred fest up here. And he wants to be a neutral party. He just wants to have people talk and act as sort of a moderator between dissenting opinions. And it doesn't always, doesn't always, nothing ever does go swimmingly. But for the most part, it's a good, he's a good broadcaster and a good reporter and a good host.
Okay.
I'm shilling for other people. Jesus.
Samuel, do you have anything to show?
I don't particularly have anything to shill. I'm mostly just involved in streams with guys much like yourselves. I can be usually found hanging out in the Lords of the Night chat. I've recently taken to hanging out with the minions of the zoo, that kind of thing. If you want to catch a hold of me, you can probably grab me in any of those live chat thingies there. Failing that, you can find me on Satsu's gaming Discord. If you want to grab an arrogant Frenchman's opinion for anything. Failing that, I'll be kicking back, drinking wine, and listening to other people's opinions, who are far more educated than myself. That's about it.
Nice. And I have my channel, which is a cooking channel. Just by this ridiculously long name that no one can even pronounce the second half of. So just call me Sanguine. But I'm also a keeper for the Minions of the Zoo. And I'm going to be swapping, starting next week, to the Wednesday Keeper.
Okay.
So tune in on Wednesdays to Minions of the Zoo, and you'll hear me bullshit with random people.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm probably going to work out the next stream with functional after this one, just because Magic can't stream on Saturday because his shift changed. It's that thing when one of your co-hosts also has a real life and a job.
Yeah.
But we'll figure something out, because he said that he was technically free tomorrow, but I don't know. We'll have to work something out. So. But keep an eye out for me. I do sometimes stream in the morning. My schedule's kind of been all over the place because my sleep schedule's been all over the place. So sometimes I do gaming streams on DLive, where I just talk shit and play whatever game my computer's decided to let me play today. And yeah, I'll be on here for the next couple weeks with Functional while Bloodwing is in his training for his work, and we're just like I said, we're trying to keep the space warm for him, and at the same time, we are going to create our own space and time to do regular scheduled streams as well.
We just got to find a good time.
Yeah, and I mean
that we're not stepping on our colleagues' streams.
Exactly,
because we run in a lot of similar circles.
Yeah, I mean that's okay too. I mean there might be overlap times sometimes, which just that's how it goes.
Nature of the beast, yeah.
But yeah, for the next couple of weeks, we're just gonna help out with Bloodwing for that, and it honestly gives me practice to set it up too. You know, finding out last minute that getting people to jump on sometimes.
And before we go, let me just bring that up.
Oh sure.
I'm going to drop it into the chat. Oh, shit. I'm such a boomer. That is Mr. Bloodwing's channel. You should go check him out. He makes some pretty entertaining videos. And when we're not supplanting his time space, you can find him Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays at 2:30 on his channel. So, yeah, check him out. He's a funny guy.
And I'm just so proud that he's gotten a job. Like it's so nice to see people actually getting them right now. Like it makes me feel like maybe I'm next, which I mean, if I get a job, I'm still going to do these streams. It just means I'll have to figure out timing.
Yeah, just time it better, but yeah.
Yeah. It's just
I know he was ecstatic that, you know, because I know for men it's more of a purpose thing, like having a purpose and doing something and having that sort of I can't speak to women as much because I'm not a woman, but I know that as a man, not having that sense of purpose in your daily life kind of wears at you. So I'm really happy he got something under his belt and he's able to get out and do something.
Yeah.
What you just said reminded me of a terrible, terrible joke I tell every so often.
Lay it on me.
Play us out.
A lot of people always guess my age wrong, so I guess you can say that I'm
47.
Effectively an old man in a young man's body.
Let's play.
I hope
Price is right. 47. $1.
A old man in a young woman.
And on that note.
Bye, you guys.
Bye, guys.
Have a good one.